So my English name is Lauren Dai, and my Chinese name is Dai Chengxing. I guess starting with Cheng, which means success, and Xing in general means happiness. I was born in New Jersey. The reason my parents named me Lauren was because they really wanted a very popular, hip American name for me. And my brother's name is Brian, which was also a very popular, hip American boy name. So my dad is originally from Beijing, and my mom her family is from Fuzhou. She was also a really great student. So she was able to go to college and then later graduate school in the US, and she studied like agriculture and biology. But the interesting thing is that my mom, her sponsor was Senator Mei Ye, who was one of the first Chinese American state senators ever. And so she was able to go to Oregon, and as a result, they met there and got married and had me and my brother. So my dad studied physics when he was at Tsinghua. I think perhaps this was an influence from my grandfather. My grandfather was the head of the Atomic Energy Institute in China. That's why my dad's family ended up moving to Beijing. And so my dad was born and raised there, and he was part of the sort of Cultural Revolution situation, and so he went to the countryside for a few years. But he often tells stories about it at home, mostly because he wants to remind us about how lucky we are. I think I'm very lucky in the sense that my parents have always been extremely encouraging, and their parenting style is much more positive feedback than it is negative. For example, I was like a bookworm when I was a kid. So I would just consume stories. Like Nancy Drew, I was obsessed. And I would just read these books for like hours and hours and hours upon end. And my parents were kind of almost scared by it. So they were like, why are you reading so much? You're hurting your eyes. And I think what they told me a lot throughout my childhood is that you have a great brain and you should use it. And you're also, very endowed in many other ways. You have so many opportunities growing up in the US. And so they really told me that anything you want to do, you can do. So my parents had always encouraged me to look into great colleges, but they never said Harvard is the one for you. So I was on the varsity swim team in high school, and we used to swim at Princeton's pool every day. And I was a lifeguard, and I taught swimming at Princeton. And I was like, I imagined myself as a Princeton student walking down the street. And so my real dream actually was to go to Princeton and be a Princeton student. I think my high school was a very formative experience. And I'm so grateful to all the teachers that I had in high school and the activities that I joined, because they really shaped me as a person. I really loved science, and that was something that my high school was very strong at. And so as a junior in high school, I had the chance to go to the New Jersey Governor's School in the Sciences. And that was one of the best experiences of my life. So I met a host of friends who many of us have gone on to become best friends, and a good portion of us ended up coming to Harvard together. And so I think that experience really showed me how much you can accomplish when you're meeting people who are very talented and very driven. And I think that's partially why Harvard is such an amazing institution.
Welcome, proud parents, siblings, extended family, friends, and most importantly, the class of 2009.
Other aspects of high school that really touched me, I think partially my extracurriculars. So for example, when I was in high school, I was president of the Model United Nations Club in my high school. I'm the kind of person that likes to get out there and meet people and talk to people, right? So I really wanted to hone my public speaking skills and get back into the game. And as a result, I joined Model United Nations, which is almost like a debate club or a speech club. And it really encourages you to think on your feet. And I think that was a big part of why my interest now, in terms of me being sort of like a very people-facing person, and I'm interested in media, potentially.
Lauren, you've been through education in the United States from kindergarten to university. Mm-hmm. How do you characterize the best or the worst parts of an American education system?
My summer of freshman year, I worked at CCTV, and for the first time, I met people who became colleagues and friends who were Chinese. I think what I realized was that there's a lot of differences and similarities between our personalities as a result of the different systems between the US and China. I would say that the Chinese education system is much more collective and rote, and the US education system is much more individualistic and open-ended. Just from my experience, I remember I lived in a dorm in Beijing, and it was called Wanliu, and it was where the law school students for Peking University would live. And there was a little elementary school right outside my window. And they were like a little army. I honestly was amazed when I first saw it. So I actually took a picture of it, which seems very touristy and embarrassing, but I was just so amazed because, they were so synchronized like an army. And I was like, that is just so different from my experience in gym when I was an elementary school student. We played like kickball and capture the flag, and it was much more, I think, maybe small group focused or team focused.
It's like not just spending, but you're stressed.
Yeah, because it's like tense, you're like
right.
tensely bending. Right now, I think I really see myself as an entrepreneur, and what I want to do, and sort of the image I have in my head, going back to kind of what you said about, is there someone who you look up to? I would say is the entrepreneurs. So like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, and on Mark Zuckerberg's side, Sheryl Sandberg, because she's such a role model for women, I think. And so I really look up to them and sort of finding a dream and finding something that they're passionate and, can influence their creativity, can instill their creativity in, and just going out there and creating it.